An Israeli airstrike on the Hezbollah terror group, destroying at least one building there in Beirut. The Israel Defense Forces issuing evacuation warnings and even firing warning shots before targeting the building described as a Hezbollah drone storage facility. Now, at this point, there's no word on any casualties, but the IDF does say it will release more information here in the coming hours. We'll keep you posted, as always. In the meantime, do want to talk about the latest on the Israel-Hamas ceasefire talks that do continue. We learned that 5 hostages would be released every week by the Hamas terror group under a new proposal that Egyptian mediators say seems promising to both sides. The war resumed in Gaza after a weeks-long ceasefire, and when asked about the latest proposal, a Palestinian official told Reuters there, quote, "There are some offers that look better than the previous ones." A lot to discuss, as always, coming in out of the Middle East, so I do want to bring in Dan Arbell, scholar in residence at the Center for Israel Studies at American University. He's also a 25-year veteran of the Israeli Foreign Service. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to be here with us.
Good to be here. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Well, first off, I want to ask you about this new proposal with the information released there by Egyptian mediators. We know that Egypt, Qatar, the U.S., they're serving as mediators between Israel and the Hamas terror group. What do you make of that proposal, and how is it maybe different than the previous ones that we've seen?
So, since the last group of hostages was released several weeks ago, talks have been stalled. And Israel resumed the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Hamas returned to fire rockets, and things are heating up again. Yet, behind the scenes, there are attempts by the mediators, which you mentioned, the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt, to try and, small steps, get back into a process of hostage release in return for Israeli stopping the fighting and releasing Palestinian prisoners. And so all these attempts are, of course, welcomed attempts, but they are kind of a drop in the ocean. They're talking about one hostage, one live hostage being released, with 4 bodies of hostages that are believed to be dead to be released, which is very important in terms of beginning some sort of process. But the process has to, at the end of the day, involve many more hostages before this problem can be resolved. And there are, the devil's in the details, and we have to look at every proposal and see what that entails and what it actually brings about, and what the demands are from Israel, what the demands are from Hamas, and how this brings us advances forward, rather than just it's a one-off thing that's being done, and that would be it.
Expanding upon that just a little bit here, what is it that is essentially holding up the ceasefire? I mean, you talked about the hostages there. That's obviously a big part of it. But what is it specifically that could be holding up a new deal, or even the extension of the old one?
Look, Hamas is demanding that Israel would stop the fighting, that Israel would commit to end the war. And I think that Israel is not ready at this point to do that. Hamas, on its part, is keeping the hostages, which is its kind of last bargaining card, and is going to be very, very uncompromising when it comes to hostage release. And so both sides are trying to kind of keep their cards close to their chest, and are not willing to give up on their big objectives. Israel wants to defeat Hamas, therefore it wants to continue the war. Hamas wants to, end Israel's war, and as long as that doesn't happen, it keeps the hostages to itself.
How have we seen the latest strikes there by Israel on Gaza? How have those kind of impacted Hamas's capabilities overall?
There have been quite effective strikes targeting Hamas headquarters, facilities, eliminating quite a few very notable senior Hamas members of the Hamas regime and military forces. And so those have been quite effective. Hamas, on its part, has begun or started firing rockets into Israeli territory and being more emboldened as a result of, they have been managing to reorganize, regroup, and rebuild some of their capabilities. And so, while Israeli strikes have been effective, they're not enough. They're not effective enough to bring Hamas to its knees or to end this war. I mean, this will continue to be a war of attrition for quite some time, I believe.
We talked a little bit earlier throughout the week. We've spoken about really just the essential, the Gaza war protests that are taking place against Hamas. And these are within Gaza. I do want to pop up some of the video here in just a second that actually show them. You should see that in just a second here. But we're talking large crowds of people that are protesting within Gaza against the Hamas terror group. How significant are these, and what do they maybe indicate about the public sentiment?
These are very significant because, for the first time since this war began, we see actual, at the grassroots level, people in the streets marching and opposing Hamas's rule, something that we've not seen in such numbers and in so many places before. So, it is significant in the way it shows kind of the sentiments inside the Gaza Strip of many residents of Gaza. On the other hand, we know Hamas is an oppressive regime, and the question is whether it will be cracking down on these, or maybe this shows that its capabilities of cracking down on protests is not there, which actually raises some hope that this would kind of be widespread and then eventually lead to Hamas either stepping down or some compromising, or in a way listening to the people of Gaza in their that are struggling.
And I do want to pop up this post here coming on social media from the Israel Defense Forces. As they say this morning, projectiles were fired from Lebanon toward northern Israel, posing a direct threat to Israeli civilians. The attack constitutes a blatant violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon, and the state of Lebanon bears responsibility for upholding that agreement there, which we've heard in the past. I want to talk a little bit briefly before I let you go here about the situation between Israel and Hezbollah. As I mentioned at the start of this, we know that there was a situation that took place just a few hours ago, as there were Israeli airstrikes on what Israel describes as a Hezbollah drone facility over in Beirut. How significant is that overall when you talk about the grand scheme of things?
So Israel managed in the fall of 2024 to kind of undermine and weaken Hezbollah's command and control structure, eliminate some of its leadership. And so Hezbollah certainly suffered major setbacks, which led it to agree to a ceasefire back in November. That ceasefire has been breached several times by both sides, yet it's been kept more or less it has been in place. What we're seeing in the last 24 hours is a concern, because it seems that if projectiles have been fired from Lebanon, that means that Hezbollah is not observing the ceasefire, and that leads to an Israeli reaction. And so while this ceasefire is holding, then such issues could lead to a flare-up or escalation, and then we're back to square one where there's full war going on. I think that the U.S., France, other mediators are trying to calm things down, and I hope to see things calm down. But if they don't, then we may see fighting between Israel and Hezbollah resume. Although I don't think it's in Hezbollah's interest, as it has not certainly regained its power, the power that it had pre-September 2024.
All right, Dan Arbell, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Anything else you want to add about any of this? Obviously, we covered an array of topics here, but anything you want to add before I let you go?
It's the hostages. That's the most important thing, the 59 hostages that need to be released, and all efforts need to be made for them to be brought back home to Israel. So I'd urge everybody listening to this to do their utmost in support, solidarity, and bringing back the hostages. Thank you.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.